Love knows no bounds, right? Well, tonight, we're diving into one of the most unsettling examples of how far obsession can go. What if I told you a man fell in love with a woman after she died? In 1930s Key West, Dr. Carl Tanzler didn't just steal hearts, he stole a body.
Get ready, because this is one of the strangest and creepiest true crime stories you'll ever hear. This is Zumundous, and tonight we're about to dig up the bizarre and disturbing tale of Carl Tanzler and his undead bride.
Zumundous.
And welcome to Zumundous Episode 5. I'm Doolin.
And I'm Keith.
And we're going to get into it with some creepy, really disturbing stuff tonight.
This is a very weird story.
This is different than anything we've done on Zumundous, and also in Mysterious World back when we were on Zumundo, which is what spawned this podcast. But so first of all, I want to open up by saying this is a response to Matt, Mark, and Miles, our podcasting brothers from Other Mothers out there in Colorado. That's Fair Podcasting is the name of their show. And I just want to say, first of all, thanks for the shout out and the challenge. They challenged us. So
they did.
They issued it. They threw down the proverbial gauntlet, and we're answering it. So in their episode 120, they just did The Haunting of Riverdale Road. That's a Colorado urban legend, and for Halloween, they're kind of like they're picking urban legends from different states and stuff like that. And I actually just listened to their episode about the werewolf of Defiance, Ohio.
Nice,
the Defiance werewolf. They're like, come on, werewolf, put on your shoes. And he's like, no, because he defies. He's defiant. No, that's not why they call him the Defiance werewolf. But so he said that he wanted us, since we're here in South Florida, to do a Florida urban legend, something from the state of Florida. Now, when we're diving into Florida urban legends, there's a lot of different directions we go with it. Like, of course, like the most commonly known is the skunk ape, which is our version of Bigfoot down here in the Everglades. And I've got
Gator Boy.
There's the bloody bucket. There's the devil's chair. These are all some great.
There's a lot.
Florida urban legends, but I actually decided to go
Robert the Doll.
Robert the Doll. I'm actually going to talk about Robert the Doll for just a second before we jump into it, because when I first heard this true crime story, because it's a little bit of a true crime story, this is something really where the truth is stranger than fiction.
Indeed.
And when I first heard this story, I was in Key West.
Okay.
Where Robert the Doll lives, and I went out there. I met Robert the Doll. He seemed chill. Seemed like a chill dude.
Chill.
But on the same ghost walk where I heard the story of Robert the Doll, I heard this story, the story of Dr. Carl Tanzler and his corpse bride. This one's gross.
It's kind of weird, yeah. And from what I've been told, it also always gets brought up on those tours with Robert the Doll and stuff. It's another Florida legend coming from the strange and creepy place known as Key West.
Weird and creepy stuff has happened in Key West.
There's a lot of ghost stories down there, and a lot of hauntings and mysterious things.
I think, anywhere where there's history, you've got ghost tales and stuff.
And we have the oldest city in the United States here in the state.
That's true, St. Augustine. Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of hauntings and wild stuff up there as well. But we're not talking about that today.
Hey, before we jump into it, which we're about to, but hey, we're on the YouTubes, by the way. We're actually filming a video this time around and giving it a shot and seeing how it goes. So yeah, if you're listening to us on Spotify or whatever, and you want to turn into YouTube and see what we actually look like, we warned you.
It's not impressive.
It's not impressive. So let's jump into the story of Dr. Carl Tanzler. Now, we're going to go back. I'm going to start it from the beginning here. So this guy, Dr. Carl Tanzler, was born in Dresden, Germany, February 8th, 1877.
Yeah.
And so allegedly,
a weird early life.
Yeah, very strange early life, and also including his childhood. Now, in his childhood, he later said that he had dreams of a dead ancestor named Countess Anna Constantia von Kassel, and she would come to him in these visions, in these dreams, and show him the face of his true love.
So I heard the same story, except that he was visited by her as like a ghost.
A ghost?
Yeah,
Okay.
and then said the same
Dreams,
thing.
visions.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
So yeah,
Showed him a clear picture, of a woman that
this
he
is,
would.
This is the woman that is your one true love.
There you go. That's
There
a good
you
way
go.
to say it.
And so he had a mental image in his mind of what his soulmate would look like because of these dreams or these visions that he was given. So he said.
Also, she may not be related to him, the ghost.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's some contention.
I read a couple
where
different
he kind
sources
of made
that
up
said-
his family lineage.
but you got to think this is an unreliable narrator because as you're going to find out, this guy was he was unwell.
That's a
good way of putting it. Sorry, sipping a pumpkin beer, man. It's tasty.
It's that time of year.
It's that time of year. So
he grew up. It was still the German Empire back then.
yeah, and it was actually during World War One, I think. Sometime around the early 1900s. So prior to World War One, he immigrated to Australia and he lived there as World War One was going on, and he was met with a lot of hostility because of his German heritage, and he was actually placed in a prisoner camp while he was there, and he was released from the prisoner camp after the war. So after the war, he returns to Germany where he meets Doris Schaefer. He has 2 children with this woman in the early 1920s, and by 1926, he decides to move with his family to America. They settle in Zephyr Hills, Florida, and the following year...
Where the water's from?
Where the water's from, the bottled water. So if you're from another state, Colorado, Matt, love you guys. If you're drinking Zephyr Hills water, we swam in it first, so enjoy that. But so he moved to Zephyr Hills, Florida, and the following year, he accepted a job as a radiology technician at the U.S. Marine Hospital in Key West. So he basically just went to his wife and kids, like, got this job down south. I'm going to go. You stay. Peace out.
Now, Zephyr Hills is nowhere near Key West, Florida.
No, it's
in another state. That's like a whole state apart.
Yeah,
You know what
Florida's a very long state. Now, like, we live in South Florida, and I've been to Key West several times. To go to Key West, and like we're about 3 hours north of Miami here. To go to Key West from here, it's about a 6-hour drive.
That's a long time.
And then if you want to drive to the northern part of the border, that's like another 4.5, 5 hours from here. So maybe
from here. Oh yeah, just
the
straight,
north border.
Yeah, if you want to go to the
Georgia.
opposite end, like towards Alabama, it's like 9 hours.
Yeah,
or
so
10
I mean,
hours.
yeah, so I mean,
It's a big place.
the drive across the state's going to take you
It's
about
not as big as Texas or
no, it's not as big as
California,
Texas, but it's a pretty long state.
Yeah, just to put it in perspective. So he moved hundreds of miles away from his family.
You're right. Now, so he moves down to Key West and takes this job as a radiology technician. And 3 years later, 1930, he sees this woman, Elena. I lost my place.
De Hoyos.
Oh yeah, Elena De Hoya. So he sees Elena De Hoya, and he's immediately stricken with this woman. He's like, "This is the most beautiful woman. This is the woman from my dreams."
Exactly. So he recognized her right on.
Yeah. So that's so
second
that
he saw her.
Right. So he sees this woman, immediately falls in love with her as she's coming into the hospital. But here's the thing about Elena. First of all, so Elena is a Cuban-American daughter of a Key West cigar maker. Now, she was born in 1909. She was 17 years old when she met a man named Luis Mesa in 1926. And their marriage fell apart after Elena suffered a miscarriage. So Mesa, her estranged husband, because he's still married to her at this point, he moves up to Miami and leaves his wife behind in Key West. So she's there alone, like mourning not only her miscarriage, but also mourning the loss of her husband. She was still in love with this guy. And then tragically, she was stricken with tuberculosis. So romance, not really anything on her mind, nothing she's thinking of at that point.
Right.
And then secondly, there's a significant age difference between Dr. Tanzler and Elena. So he's 53 years old at this time, and she's 20.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's like a 33-year age gap, and she did not return his affection. Like, obviously, it's a 53-year-old man.
From
That's
what
really
I understand,
weird.
she had wanted nothing to do with him.
Yeah, exactly. So, but here's the thing, though. Even though he specialized in radiology, he was just a radiology technician. He promised that he could cure her. Now, here's the thing. He's not a physician.
No.
But he believed he was predestined to be her true love and cure her. There's no cure for tuberculosis in the 1930s.
Right. It was normally fatal back then.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we can treat it. or it doesn't spread like it used to.
Right.
When you do get it, it's usually from people from a developing world that come and bring it back to the United States or something like that.
Yeah.
Or have it over there.
Yeah. So not only is there no cure,
it's a grim
but
diagnosis.
he's not even qualified to treat her.
He can take X-rays.
He can take X-rays. That's it. That's all he can do.
And then I guess I don't know if they're still bombarding people with X-rays to see if it would cure things. But
yeah, I mean, it was a different time, and medicine was different.
For a lot, and
a lot you got ghost in your blood. You should do cocaine about it.
Yeah, exactly. There was like a famous shoe thing where you could see the size of your foot and how it fit in the shoe, but with an X-ray. And it was like super bad for people, and people were like X-raying their foot at the, at the department store. Like they used this stuff like pretty, I don't know how to say, they're running fast and loose with it back in the day. So I don't know what exactly he was doing to try and treat her via radiology or not. Maybe he was trying to treat her in a more traditional manner.
Actually, so here's the thing. He stole X-ray equipment from the hospital he was working in to bring it to her home to treat her in her home.
So I never read that. That's great.
Yeah. And while he's doing that, he's promising her parents, I can cure her. Just let me in. I'll treat her. I'll cure her.
Well, then that sounds good, right?
Yeah, that sounds. And everyone's like, like all the other doctors said she's not going to survive this. So come on into our house and treat her. So on top of that, like he showered her with gifts, promised to take care of her, even though he's still got a wife and 2 kids back in Zephyr Hills. And
correct.
Both of them, they're both married to other people. Married. And also English is a second language for both of these people. He's from Germany. She's,
thought of that.
Yeah. I mean, so she obviously like they both speak some English.
Well, she's from the United States.
She's from the United States, but also was she was a Cuban American. So she probably Spanish was probably her first language. So
yeah, makes sense.
So it's questionable how much they were able to really get to know each other during their time together, especially with English being their second language for both of them. So this infatuation, it was very one-sided and so strong. He tried experiments on her that he had no business doing with things he stole from the hospital.
That's not legal.
Yeah, it's definitely not legal. It's not now, and it wasn't then.
Human trials.
And for all we know, everything he did to her could have worsened the situation.
I have a note on that.
All right, go.
No, later on.
Oh, okay. So tragically, Elena de Hoyos succumbed to tuberculosis on October 25th, 1931, at the age of 22. So she was only 22 years old when she dies. Very sad, very tragic. And Tanzler not only paid for her funeral, but insisted to her family on purchasing a pricey stone mausoleum in the Key West Cemetery for her remains.
Yeah, very elaborate.
Yeah, very. Yeah, and so now this is where the story goes from like inappropriate infatuation to a scary obsession.
To inappropriate.
Yeah, and I'm okay. I'm gonna put the warning in there in just a minute. I'm getting there, but I'm not there yet. So I mean, I think a lot of you guys know like which direction this is gonna go. But so she's dead. She's passed, and she's in this mausoleum in Key West. Now he paid for this mausoleum.
Indeed,
he owns it. He has a key. So during this time, he's able to visit her, which he does. He visits
quite
her
often,
remains every night.
Evening,
it's literally every night he sneaks into the cemetery, lets himself into the mausoleum, and sits with her.
I didn't know he did that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
just knew he went there every night. Yeah.
He would go there every night, sit in the mausoleum with her body.
Oh, right.
And he would sit with her for hours, talking to her. He would also bring formaldehyde every night and just keep injecting the corpse with formaldehyde.
Oh, wow. Okay.
To try to delay the decaying process.
Is different. All right.
Oh, yeah. I did some research here. And he did this on a nearly daily basis just to keep her looking as alive as possible for as long as possible. He sat with her for hours talking, singing to her in Spanish, and he claimed talking to her spirit. Now, I don't know what else he did in there, and I'm not going to speculate, and I'm not going to go there.
Yeah, let's not do that.
But according to Tanzler, as he was like speaking to her spirit, he claims that she asked him personally, like her spirit said, "Take me home, take me home." And 2 years later, after her death in 1933, he does exactly that. And if you're squeamish,
So
this is not the rest of this podcast is not for you. Go ahead.
my research stated the same thing, that he had visited her every night or in the evenings, and everybody thought it was weird, late night visits to the graveyard, right? I didn't know about sitting and talking to her, etc., but just being there. And then 2 years after her death, he consciously made the decision. I didn't understand that he had a key or anything.
It was
in
his mausoleum.
This is
He
creepy.
bought it.
I knew he paid
Yeah.
for the grave
Yeah.
site, but I thought he dug her up from what I read.
Right?
But,
No.
this is pretty crazy. And at this point, her body is in advanced state of decay.
It's 2 years. She's been dead 2 years at this point.
Yeah.
And so he gets a wagon, sneaks into the graveyard.
It's a toy wagon.
It's a toy wagon, like one that a kid plays with.
Yeah, like a radio flyer.
Yep,
But not a radio flyer.
Yeah, I mean it's 1930s.
Yeah.
So he takes her body under the cover of night, puts it in this wagon, probably covers it, so nobody sees him hauling a body. But you're leaving the cemetery in the middle of the night with something. Luckily, nobody. Well, or unluckily, as the
These are
case
just
may
my
be,
snacks.
nobody saw him.
Yeah.
So he takes the body home. He assesses the corpse. It's gross, as you said, advanced state of decay.
Right.
So this is where he starts, shall we say, Frankensteining the body.
Restoring.
If you want to call it restoration, I guess that's a way to do it. So here's what he does. He secures her limbs to her torso with piano wire. He replaced her decaying skin with silk that he'd soaked in wax and plaster. So basically, like, he paper maches her face.
So I actually read that he actually did use paper mache.
I had wax,
cloth soaked in paper
silk
mache.
with wax and plaster. So it's a form of kind of paper
that.
mache. Yeah.
Because her skin started to, deteriorate.
Mm-hmm.
And that the piano wire thing I didn't read about, but that he actually used hangers and things like that to keep her body kind of reconstructed.
Right. And
in the same shape.
Correct.
Of like because obviously you have no water in your body, you deflate. And, I don't know. I'm not a mummy guy. I don't know everything. But
it doesn't stop there.
no, it doesn't.
He fashions a wig from her hair that, in the state of decay had fallen out. I imagine, like, while he was probably going
He had to work
visit
on
her
this every day.
Yeah, so I imagine, like, while he was going to visit her in the mausoleum, her hair's falling out because that's what
I don't know
happens.
about that.
But anyways, so he made a wig fashioned from her hair.
Okay.
And then, attached it
tracking
on
that,
her,
yeah.
and then doused her entire body in disinfectants and perfume to cover the smell.
And he built he had like an airplane or built an airplane that he was kind of doing these experiments.
We're getting to that. That's even crazier. But and then he puts glass eyes in her sockets because like your eyes go real fast when they dry out. Exactly. So he replaces their eyes, and at this point, Elena doesn't look anything like she did in life, and to say that like this corpse is desecrated is an understatement.
Definitely an extreme. It's just gross.
Yeah, no, this is a gross one. So
it's sad too.
he dressed her, kept her in his bed.
He moved her from that. So he had a makeshift, basically like a surgery room inside that airplane thing. And then he moved her from there into his bed at some point and started actually still sleeping in his bed.
Yeah. Sleeping next to her every night.
He hung up a curtain around his bed.
Yeah.
I guess privacy or whatever, but, and then kept buying like women's clothes
to dress her and stuff
and jewelry and stuff to give to her.
Oh man.
Kind of weird.
So it's never been verified, but there's alleged evidence that I don't even want to say it out loud, but let's just say he put a tube in it, and I'll just leave it at that. All right. And I'm going to move on from that. So for the next 7 years, he lives with this corpse for 7 years of this corpse, like sleeping in his bed.
Yeah.
And now this is where he starts to mess up. Now, at some point during this time,
I think he already messed up.
He done messed up.
You done messed up,
AA Ron. The hospital, he still works for the hospital.
Okay.
The hospital figured out that he was stealing supplies and expensive equipment from them because he's
a good way to get fired.
Yeah, and he did. He gets fired. Now, he survived by receiving money in the mail from his wife. His wife he's like, hey, writes to his wife, I lost my job. Oh, here's money. I got you. Brutal. So he lived in a shack that was barely a shelter, which he also used as his workshop. And with the money he got from his real wife, He'd go out and buy women's clothes, as you said, dress her up. But here's the thing, man. They didn't have AC back then. Like this is a
No,
this is
they
a
did not.
this is a body in the South Florida humidity, so it is deteriorating rapidly. Now, as if this wasn't crazy enough, now this is where you get into the spaceship thing. Carl Tanzler believed with his whole chest that if he took Elena's body into space, the radiation from the sun would do some sort of Frankenstein shit and bring her body back to life. So he built a spaceship with pieces he salvaged from the junkyard. He planned to take it into space one day, and he called it Elena's airship. Now, he would have never had the technology to bring this thing into space. Like NASA, it was 1930s, man. Like NASA can't even do this shit.
We weren't going to the moon yet.
We're still like 20, 30 years away from the moon landing at this point.
69.
Yeah. So this is before the first man will walk on the moon, and to say that he thought that he could build a spaceship at that point is just absolutely insane.
You know, I don't. This guy thought he could do a lot of things, though. Which were a bit nutty.
Yeah, bring a corpse back to life is.
It's like Pet Cemetery stuff.
It's like let's say you got to space, man. What's your next plan? The sun's gonna magically fix it.
I don't know. That's crazy. That's the first time I've heard about that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and I don't mean crazy in a negative way. I'm just saying like it's not something that makes sense,
right,
from our understanding.
Right.
Yeah, I don't mean it to sound like I'm constantly insulting this guy, but it's a really scary.
I think it's okay if we can
true crime
this
story.
insult guy.
I'm not a fan.
Well, no, of course not.
Yeah,
I wouldn't.
Any of this.
I'm a big fan of Dr. Carl Tanzler's work.
You know, he called himself Count Carl von.
Yeah. I mean, like when I was on the ghost tour, they would refer to him as the Count, and then they're like, "Oh, by the way, he was never a Count."
He used a different name when he got his job originally at the Marine Hospital.
Probably to make himself sound like he's like of royal descent, I guess.
That's why they say there's some debate whether that lady was even part of his family, right? Because he's not a von Kossel, he's Tanzler. So.
Right. So once again, that's goes back to his story, like dead ancestor. Was it though?
Creepy past, that kind of stuff.
So this is where after he's gotten away with this for 7 years. Aside from getting fired from the hospital, like why are you stealing all these supplies? Doesn't matter, you're fired. You know.
And rumors started surfacing too about
this is where he gets messy and he gets caught.
Yeah.
Somebody supposedly walked by where he lived, and they saw in the window, and there in the window, and there in the window by the candlelight, they see Tanzler. He's got this corpse, and he's dancing with it.
They saw him dancing with a lady, or the way I saw it described was dancing with like possibly like a big doll or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird, but then
which is the effigy of a person potentially.
Yeah, but this like rumors started to fly. I mean, Key West is not a big place. Like this, especially in the 1930s. It's not. This isn't like a tourist destination like it is now. Like
it's not as heavily popular.
Everybody knows everybody is what I'm assuming, and so everybody has been like
small town.
Have you seen what Tanzler's?
You see Carl dancing in the window?
Dancing in the window. Yeah. So this actually gets back to Elena's sister. And Elena's sister kind of puts two and two together. Like, this guy was infatuated with my sister. Wait a minute. She notifies the police, and they go.
Okay.
Because, like, he's, like I think she had a suspicion.
So she went by herself.
Is that accurate?
I read that she went by herself.
And then saw it.
And then he brought her into the place.
You're right. He showed it
to her. And
like, look at, I'm caring for your sister.
An effigy of your sister. I didn't hear anything about a confession, but that she saw, basically she was so grossed out by it, she was like, and
she runs to the police.
Right.
So she notifies the police. Investigators go to the mausoleum. They go in. There's no body.
Come on, man.
So immediately they arrest him. They charge him with wantonly and maliciously destroying a grave and removing a body without authorization.
One count of grave robbing. Yeah.
So he was examined by a psychiatrist.
He was, actually. I found this interesting.
Yeah. And it was determined that he was competent to stand trial despite the fact, he was mentally fit despite the fact that he testified that he wanted to take Elena, quote, high into the stratosphere so that the radiation from outer space could penetrate her tissues and restore life to her somnolent form. Yeah, that doesn't. That's something a sane person says, right?
Yeah, that science doesn't check out, buddy.
Yeah. Citation needed, man.
He's got some of the terms right. Yeah.
He uses big words, so he must be right.
I don't, man.
But here's the thing, though, is it's 7 years later.
Yeah.
He's done this. He did this 7
well,
years
it's like
ago.
nine years later at this point.
Oh, okay.
Since her death, right?
Oh, okay. Is it 9 years?
I know, something like that.
So
Carry
the statute of limitations is over. Like basically, like
Which is crazy,
we can't,
right?
Yeah, we can't convict him of this.
So like, hey, well, he dug up the body. That's grave robbing. He doesn't deny it,
Right.
but
We can't convict him because it was 7, 8, 9 years
too
ago.
long ago. Yeah, weird.
And so he was released. And this is really crazy. He actually received a bit of compassion from the public, with some women even viewing him as a hopeless, albeit eccentric romantic.
Yeah, I've heard a little bit about that. Not that people thought he was, but that he was portrayed that way, or
Yeah, I mean that's probably
Or
what
portrayed
that's probably
himself
how the
that way.
defense the defense took it and
But
stuff.
Liggity loved her. Yeah, yeah, gross.
God.
No, not a good defense.
So, and this is the part that I think is kind of obscene, but they took Elena's body and they put it on display
They did.
at a local
Well,
funeral home.
Did you know he asked for it back
I'm sure he did.
after the trial?
I'm sure he did.
He actually requested the body be returned to him.
Yeah, well, I
which
mean-
is wild.
Ew.
And they said no.
Yeah, no, that's not happening,
Hard
man.
no. Yeah.
The body was placed on. Nearly 7,000 people came to this funeral home to see this
Yeah.
thing on display, which is where if you pull up a picture of her,
There are pictures of it online.
There are pictures of it online, and you can check it out if you want, if you're into that.
I mean, there's pictures on Wikipedia too. They're all nothing weird.
But so he's a free man. He's
Yes.
not in prison. So when they laid her body to rest, they actually did it in an unmarked grave
In secret.
so that he couldn't find her body. So I don't even think it's public to this day. You can't go visit her grave. It's an unmarked grave in Key
understand
West.
that, yeah.
So
Yeah.
so following the uproar around his arrest, he left Key West. He returns back home to Zephyr Hills, which I don't understand why his wife is still married to him at this point.
I don't know.
But in his later years, Tanzler wrote an autobiography for a pulp magazine called Fantastic Adventures. His real wife took pity on her mentally deranged husband and continued to support him. He earned U.S. citizenship, moved to Tampa.
He did. He moved. Yeah, he earned his citizenship in like 1950, I believe.
Something like that, yeah. And there was a rumor that he rebuilt a life-sized replica dummy
Yes.
that it looked exactly like the doll that he had made from Elena's body.
I watched a video on this, and they had like a picture of I don't know if it was
effigy?
him with like a death mask at first, and then it sort of escalated from there, and he built a whole thing. Yeah.
Oh, man. So
And there's also a rumor that he did recover her body and switched it out, so the effigy was still her, and
know.
not the.
that's...
Yeah, it's just,
Well, I mean,
it continues to stay weird.
they say that when he died, and at some point in the 50s, 1952.
Yep.
When he died in 1952,
At 75 years old.
he had his arms wrapped around the dummy, like for comfort. And that's a rumor,
But-
so we don't know that. But considering the details of the story that are true, it's
Reported that they found him behind an organ, though.
an
On,
organ.
on the floor behind the organ. Like if there's like a piano or whatever in the room, like
Yeah.
maybe like I'm picturing like a stand-up one, not like a big one. But like he just fell down behind and died.
Man, yeah,
He's
his
75. I mean, he's an old guy.
Yeah, that's the whole story just kind of blows my mind, dude. It's definitely one of the weirder, creepier stories.
It's a tiny bit weirder.
Oh, you got more?
Well, there are stories of actual marriages. There's a marriage between a live person and a dead person in certain cultures, in certain places of the world. It's happened in India. It's happened in South Korea. It's happened in Germany. It's happened in China.
So no till death do you part. It's just like
it's
you're
like-
just
so-
you're just married.
A lot of from what I was reading here, it has to do with like during World War II, a pregnant lady could marry her soldier husband after he expired, so that their kid had like benefits. Basically, that's grossly oversimplifying the thing,
Right.
Even though that somebody had already passed away. It's happened in South Korea, and most of the time, from what I was reading about those were to keep families connected. It's either for like a benefit situation or to keep lineages going. Like, so if you were like a king and a queen, right? But they died before they were able to unite those families, they would just marry them post afterwards and be like, oh, it was like they were married the whole time.
That's bizarre.
It is bizarre. It's different, you know. But it happens, and I mean, there's the Weekend at Bernie's thing, you know, with not the movie, but you know, in some cultures, you know, they live the last day after somebody's passed away. So like, you know, people come over and like, you're right. That's actually what spreads a lot of disease when it comes to like Ebola and stuff like that, because when it outbreaks, it's actually when you're most contagious in those last few hours.
It's crazy, man. And this is our response to That's Fair Podcasting.
Yeah, we found a local one.
Yeah, this one wasn't an urban legend, but a true crime story. But this is a case, I think, where the truth really is stranger than fiction. So so that's the story of Dr. Carl Tanzler's obsession. Began with admiration, spiraled into something darker, raising questions about life, death, and sanity, blurred the lines in between. And the world might remember him for his macabre devotion, but I think this should serve as a reminder that sometimes the past should stay buried. So thanks for tuning in, guys, and be sure to catch next week's Halloween special as we get into the devil himself. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week, guys. Stay curious, stay weird. For Zumundous, I'm Doolin.
I'm Keith.
Have a Zumundous week, everybody. You want to go dig up some food?
Oh, no.
Oh, gross.
Bad joke.
Yeah, I take that back. I apologize. That wasn't appropriate.
Zumundous.